Freeland Professor of Economics at Davidson College. Before then, Dr. Jefferson served as chair of the Department of Economics at Swarthmore College, where he was the Centennial Professor of Economics. Prior to this position, Dr. Jefferson was also an economist at the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, so he's come home. Dr. Jefferson received a BA in economics from Vassar College and an MA and PhD in economics from the University of Virginia. So Vice Chair Jefferson, first and foremost, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So this is your second appearance with us here on our series, Exploring Careers in Economics. And since then, your role has shifted a bit from governor to vice chair, which is the second highest officer of the Federal Reserve. And I can imagine with greater responsibility and leadership comes greater stress. So we'll talk about that a little bit today too.
Okay.
But first, as we dive in, I'd like for us to talk about the differences between your former role as governor and now as vice chair.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in this event. And I also want to welcome all of you who are here in person and online. This is a tremendous opportunity and privilege for me. And so I appreciate the invitation. Well, certainly my role has shifted, as you mentioned, and as a result of being vice chair, I am much more involved in the monetary policy formulation process here at the board. And that is in addition to my regular activities as a governor, which are many in and of themselves. But I enjoy the opportunity to be thinking ahead about what might be next steps in the monetary policy making process. And so that's been a source of enjoyment for me.
Great, great. Can you talk to us about what your day-to-day looks like and how you prepare yourself to meet your daily challenges as vice chair?
Yes, I can. So my day typically starts pretty early in the morning, in that I like to start the day with exercise. And for me, that's sort of a meditative activity. It allows me to set my day and helps me to manage not only the stress of the job, but also the opportunities that might come up in the course of the day in terms of thinking about problems in a new way. So just knowing that I've already done my exercise allows me to slide into the day in a very
Mhm.
calm kind of way.
I can respect that. And when you look at your work from week to week, how do you break that down to feel more manageable? Because I can imagine it's can seem a bit of like an onslaught.
Well, yes, there's a lot. Okay, there's a lot going on, and for me, I like to think in terms of balancing and my work load and pacing myself.
Mhm.
So this activity, this job, can take a lot of time and energy, and it's a marathon. You really have to think, okay, I want to structure my days so that I can uh, be productive for the long run. So even during the course of the day, I try to take a break to go for a walk, for instance, after lunch. That's something that I value, that's very important to me. And it's a way for me in the course of the day to sort of just reconnect with myself and what I'm thinking about and feeling. The walk could be 5 or 10 minutes, but I notice that when I come back from the walk, I am refreshed and invigorated and ready for the second half of my day. So I think finding moments, no matter how small for yourself, during each day to sort of reconnect um, can actually allow you to be more productive when you need to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, as a campus recruiter I've been a campus recruiter for a long time now. I meet students and they seem very concerned with how do I prepare myself for what's next? How do I prepare myself for an internship, for my first entry level job? How do I prepare myself for my PhD program? So I want to ask you if you could give us some advice. How did you prepare yourself for this role as vice chair? Is there anything you specifically did? Speak with mentors? Any sort of learning you engaged in?
Mhm. Well, it's definitely the case that throughout my career, I never imagined that this opportunity would arise.
Sure.
Okay. And so when I was a young person working here at the board as a research assistant, so FYI, my first job out of college was here at the board as a research assistant. And even in graduate school and as a professor, I was not thinking that one day I would get the invitation to work at the Federal Reserve Board. Um, but it turned out that the different jobs and opportunities that I had prior to come here, particularly the role I had as Vice President of Academic Affairs and Dean of Faculty at Davidson College, really honed in me the skills that I needed to perform many of the functions that I do today. So the takeaway from this for me is that you don't know what opportunities are going to present themselves as you go through your life's course. But I think it's important to avail yourself to many different type of opportunities because in doing that, you are building skills and talents that could come in handy later on. So, to the extent that you can, as you are going through your life's course, I think it's important to look for opportunities that may be different from what you imagined and being willing to take those opportunities, to take those risks that might end up serving you well later on.
Thank you. Thank you. So I know you mentioned a little earlier that you prioritize health, exercise, that wellness
Mm.
in the mornings after lunch. I've heard from CEOs work-life balance, work-life exchange. At different points in your career, maybe work is a little more dominant than personal. How else do you maintain a sense of balance and satisfaction amidst the demands of your leadership role?
Yeah, so I want to say a little bit about work life balance because what that has turned out to mean for me is that over some period of time, your life may seem out of balance in that your work life balance does not mean that you're always in balance every single day or every single week, right? Because there can be certain times, and you all know this as students, where it's crunch time, okay, and you're preparing for exams. There is no balance in that, okay. You you say, okay, this week I got to focus on this, okay,
Correct.
and it turns out that that is true in your professional life also. It can be true or it could be true. And so really what I try to engage in is an understanding of the demands of the moment and what I need over time, right? So if over the course of a month I can have some kind of balance, that's good. And then there are maybe periods of time in which the work is such that, wow, on a daily basis, I can keep things in balance. So, what is the counterbalance to the stress of my job? For me, it is having fun, right? So I enjoy traveling.
Mhm.
I have a little hobby in terms of trying to learn Spanish that is very, very mixed low grade success. Okay.
Okay.
But it's something, so I have a program, app I use, Duolingo. You all may have heard of that. Okay, so about 15 minutes a day, I always do Duolingo. I'm on an incredible streak now, okay, of over 1,300 days.
That's
So I
incredible.
think is pretty impressive, and it's just a diversion, right? It's the idea of me learning Spanish is pretty far-fetched, but I like to amuse myself in that way. And so some people do Wordle, some people do other, so for me it's Duolingo. And so I try to have those kind of distractions in the day that help me to relax. And then when I have to focus, I'm able to focus.
Great. I'm sure you know more Spanish than you think you do.
Well, we'll see this summer. I'm
Yeah.
taking a trip to Costa Rica, so we're gonna see how that works out.
Or you're going to need to report back.
Exactly.
I personally am learning the ukulele. I say that loosely. My
Is it?
Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is still pretty poor, but
There you
we'll
go.
get there. We'll get there. Can you share a little bit with us about your leadership style, particularly how you go about mentoring colleagues who are earlier in their careers and whether you have more or less time to do that?
Well, I have an opportunity to work with uh, people every day here at the board, and I believe that my leadership style is very collaborative. It's very inclusive, and I think that leadership very much has a service component. So when I'm interacting with my colleagues, I really want to trust their expertise. In other words, we're fortunate here at the board to have a very talented staff. There are individuals in all parts of the board who know way more about their specific areas of expertise than I do. And so, as someone who is in a leadership role, I want them to feel safe to share their expertise with me. So I like to ask a lot of questions. I like to get their recommendations. And I believe that over time, that's a way of building trust, because if they feel as though that I trust them and their judgment and their expertise, then they will be more willing to bring forth their discretionary effort into the activities that are consistent with the mission of the board. So I really see my leadership style as one of trying to facilitate their professional growth, trying to encourage collaboration so that they are able to contribute to the mission of the board in as fullest a way as possible.
That's a that sounds like it's great working with you.
Well, you would have to ask them. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know for sure.
Definitely. Well, I also wanted to move on to additional advice. I know I think you're full of it, but like full of advice. But sorry, wow, wow. Please forgive me.
That's all right. That's okay.
Oh gosh. Well, in other interviews, you have stated, that it's important for public policy to hear voices that represent diversity, and that sometimes the profession, when you're in your PhD program, can feel like a very lonely road. So, as you look across the landscape of your career at the board and externally, you're in a highly visible position now that is representative of diversity. What advice can you share with enthusiastic young, diverse talent entering the field? And what actions or habits do you think can help them along their journey to be successful?
Right. So instead of giving advice, I think it could be useful for me to just share what has motivated me
Sure.
in the profession, um, knowing that it could be different for every person. So at one point in my life, I was very much like you in thinking about what I might do um, over the course of my career. And I was lucky, I think, to take Econ 1 as a freshman in college. And what it did for me was open up a new way of looking at the world. And if you think about it as sort of putting on a pair of glasses, I was amazed and I said, well, this is one way of looking at the world, understanding some elements of my background, and that I was born and raised right here in Washington, D.C., and it was always some things in my community that I was curious about in terms of particular economic outcomes. And so learning about economics helped me to uh, develop a an understanding for some of the things that I'd observed prior in my life. And I then started to become interested in the questions that economics might be able to answer. And so I continued to follow that interest. So, in thinking about the profession, it is one that I enjoy personally, but like many professions, it has challenges in that there has been a particular history with regards to who studies economics and who doesn't study economics. And I think we're at a moment now where the profession is aware that because of the kinds of questions that are asked uh, about the economy, about society, about global issues, that we need people studying economics from all different perspectives. Because while the questions may stay the same from generation to generation, people's lived experiences can be very different. And so we need different people at the table who might provide new questions or different answers to old questions. And that is something that I enjoy being a part of. And if that sounds like something that you would be interested in, then certainly what I think I would want to do and what the board is doing is providing an invitation for you to join in this process of helping this profession to be all that it can be.
Thank you so much. Can you talk to us a little bit more about maybe um, the importance of risks? You mentioned that or a little bit earlier about taking risks. Can you share with us maybe an important risk you took in your career and why, and what did it yield for you?
Yeah, so I think um, risk taking is important, but it's got to be risk that makes sense to you. Okay. Um, when we do things that take us outside of our zones, it provides an opportunity for growth. And I want to use a personal experience in this regard. So I spent 22 years at Swarthmore College. I was a professor with an endowed chair. I had been chairman of the department, and I could have stayed there for the rest of my career and been very happy and very successful. Um, but an opportunity came up for me to transition at Davidson College, to transition from being purely an academic to an academic slash administrator. But it required me to uproot myself and
Mhm.
all that I had built up in order to explore that opportunity. And so it represented for me a risk, because one, I didn't know whether or not I would be a successful administrator and helping to run an institution. But I was at a point in my life where I thought, well, if I am going to engender further growth and understanding for myself and possibly others, I needed to do something different. I needed to take that risk in order to continue to grow and learn, because I love to learn. I'm a lifelong student. And that's something that excites me every single day. I'm excited when I get up in the morning because I feel as though, okay, I'm gonna learn something today. And so that is what motivates me to take risks that will allow me to learn something new.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts there. I want to transition a little bit more about building networks within communities. You've mentioned that, and again, in previous interviews, I had a kind of chance to internet stalk you, which is
Yes.
like my second favorite thing to do.
That's okay.
But you've had you've had a great time building relationships with colleagues across the field of economics. What advice or what can you share with students as they think about how they should go about building their own networks, for their careers and future?
Mhm. Well, I think in terms of building networks, what's important there is that you believe that everybody you come in contact with has something of value to share. Okay, if you believe in their intrinsic worth, and you are open to the possibility that that person could be a friend of yours, right? Now, that maintaining that mindset can be challenging sometimes, okay? Because we can sometimes be in a situation in which it's stressful and there are deadlines and things need to get done. And we ourselves can be in a place where we're not open to all that could possibly be true in that moment. Let me just put it that way. So, but networking is really about thinking broadly and over time about how you want to be in the world and how you want to be perceived in the world. And I have learned that relationships or connections that I made very early in my career have later on paid real dividends in ways that I didn't even know or imagined. Okay. So I do think networking is important. Um, and it requires that you are willing to share some of yourself with people that you come in contact with. And that can be a little hard, and we all have different personalities. And so I think it's important that you gauge for yourself, okay, how much of this can I do? How wide can my
Mhm.
circles be? And there may be different gradations as you go through the process of doing it.
Thank you. Do you have your own kind of professional board that you rely on when you're making some of these career decisions for yourself? Or who do you phone in those moments where you're
Right.
like, wow, this is incredible. Am I thinking about this right?
The answer to that question is yes. I have a core group of about 5 or 6 people
Mhm.
who I consult before I make a really big move,
Mhm.
because I know that one, they've known me forever, and I know that they have my interest at heart.
Mhm.
One of those people you may have heard me talk about before is my first grade teacher who's still alive. And she is someone who knew me before I knew I was a person. Okay. And so I know I can talk to her, and I was, just say, look, I'm thinking about doing this. And she has that perspective that can, tell me, what how one way of thinking about it, and so I find that very useful. But I also have contemporary friends
Mhm.
who I've known for a long time who are not economists. So none of these people are economists, and that's a good thing, because if I'm making a professional move or something, they don't really care about the econ part. They're just trying to figure out, okay, is this going to work for you or is this not going to work for you? And they're able to share their feedback. Now, I don't always do exactly what they say,
Mhm.
but I weigh very carefully, what they share with me.
It's truly critical to have friends like that that you can
Yes,
reach out to and help you think through those big life decisions.
absolutely.
Great. Well, as we wrap up, I do have one more pressing question for
Hmm.
you. In maybe 2 to 3 minutes or less, can you share why students here should consider starting their careers within the Federal Reserve System, either as an intern or a research assistant?
Hmm. Well, the shortest of answers that I'm going to expand on, just because that's what I did, okay, in that I mentioned earlier, I was lucky enough to have as my first job after graduating from Vassar College. I actually came back to DC and was able to get a job as a research assistant here at the Federal Reserve. So I had been an econ major at Vassar, and but I didn't really know what it was to be an economist. I didn't know really what economists did on a day by day basis. And so coming here at the board gave me an opportunity to see what economists do. And I really enjoyed that. And people who come here as research assistants, they don't all go on to get a PhD in economics. Some go to law school, business school, medical school. They go to all of the different professions. But having the opportunity to see for yourself what happens here at the board is very important. And it can be enlightening in terms of what you might ultimately want to do. Now, having said that, coming here later in your career as an economist is a wonderful thing in that we have people who have spent decades here, because the Fed is a very important institution in American society. It's a way to have an impact on the lives of everyday Americans. The work and the mission that we have is integral to the well being of everyone in this society. And so, if that is something that's important for you and you want to have a professional life that is impactful and consequential, this is one of the institutions where you can do that. I can speak from experience, the work is not boring, in that the economy is changing all of the time. The global economy that we interact with is changing all of the time. In terms of the economics profession, they're providing new insights into how the economy works and the role of monetary policy, how to conduct monetary policy. Should we be secretive? Should we be transparent? Um, should we use the money supply as an instrument? Should we use interest rates? All of these questions change over time. And so, as someone who's studying the economy in this policy environment, you're always having to keep up and learn. And so, if you enjoy learning, you enjoy policy, and you care about the American people, then this is an institution where uh, very smart people self-select into it, and the workforce is united around our mission, which is given to us by the Congress, and that tends to be relatively stable over time, and that's something that I enjoy also.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. Excuse me. I appreciate your time and your words of wisdom. And I hope to see you around the board sometime soon.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much. And thank you all for coming out, those of you who are here in person and those of you online. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mhm.